been really good about posting the videos to our Moodle page. I promise, these are on my YouTube page. I just haven't made them available on ours. I will update those. So for this, we've gone through setting up the Photoshop document. Remember, when you're working in Photoshop, you're working with pixels and you're working with layers. So everything you have has to have its own layer to work with them. One persistent question that we had last class period was about moving the ruler and adjusting the rulers. To turn on your rulers, remember you can go to View or Command R will turn those on. And why you would want to adjust your rulers. By default, the 0 of the ruler is usually the top left-hand corner. So everything is measured from this point over or this point down. And you've got a top and a left-hand ruler. Every once in a while, you need to change your point of reference. So if I was making something like a poster that had 2 columns and I wanted to divide this up evenly into 2 columns, I know this is roughly 8 3/4. So this would be 5 3/8. So I would need to move this over, 4 3/8 to right there to be closer to a middle point. If I wanted to give an inch behind this and an inch to this side to set up another guide, it would be difficult for me to do the math and subtract an inch from here or an inch from here. However, if I click the top corner and change my reference point to here, now that it's 0, I can easily see my 1 inch on one side or the other. This is just, it helps you set up guides and know where things are at from there. Here's another great tip. Remember when you click and drag to create your guidelines, if I want it to snap right to a certain guide, in this case I've got increments of 1/8 of an inch, hold down your Shift key and you'll find it will snap and jump in increments of 1/8 of an inch. So if I want it to be right on -1, I'm holding down Shift and it'll stay right there. This really works if you're, if computer gets real close, it's 98, 0.986, it goes over a little bit. If I hold down my Shift, it'll jump right to 1 and it'll stay right there as well. Make sense? That comes in handy as well. Okay, kind of back to the project. I'll undo. Another thing, if you need to undo something, here's how Photoshop deals with undos. In Illustrator, you can do an infinite number of undos. You can undo everything that you've done all the way till you open up your project. Photoshop, not so much. If I go to Edit and Undo, it'll undo once. If I go to Edit and try to do it again, it just says Redo. I can only really undo the last thing that I did. However, if I go to Window, I can open up at the History palette. The History palette will keep a record of everything that I've done. So in this case, I've opened it. I've done a little bit of eraser. I was playing around with it earlier, making new guides. And if I go to Edit and Redo, you can see it adds on to the last thing that I did. So every time I do something, so if I start painting with this, let's choose a layer and layer that we can actually see, and started painting, you can see every time I use my brush tool, it remembers it. If I do Edit and Undo, it'll step back once. If I want to go farther back, I can click in my History palette, and I can actually step backwards and undo some of the things. So if I want to get rid of these guides, you can see the guides are now going away. Or I can go up to Edit and step backwards, and it does the same thing. It stepped backwards in my History palette. The History palette is another fun one to have open if you want to undo multiple things. Here's the kicker. Photoshop will only remember about 40 different things. It won't remember everything that you do. So if you need to undo something, make sure you undo it quickly before Photoshop actually forgets what's in your history. Does that make sense? All cool? Okay. Back to the project for the third time. We've set up our document. We've got everything in its own layer. What this document or this project was asking you to do will look like this. You're going to take those bricks and all the other layers and we're going to make a composite. You're going to take out the background and you're going to make it look like it's all one piece. Make the lightning and the sky and you got the city background, all that fun stuff. In order to do this, it's going to ask you to create some what are called layer masks. And if you look in your layers, these are the extra little icons that are dedicated to each one of these different layers. I'll jump back into here, and I'm going to move my bricks in front, and we'll see why we use a layer mask. I've got my bricks layers selected, and what they're going to ask you to do is to remove this inner edge. Now, to get rid of it, I just need to erase those pixels. I need to make them transparent, go away. Photoshop does have an eraser tool. Here's your eraser tool. And if I use it, it works like a brush. And at the very top, I can change the size and the hardness of my brush to make it whatever size. And if I click and drag, you can see it's erasing away those pixels so I can see the lightning and everything else that's underneath it as well. But there's a problem with using the eraser brush. If I click and drag over this, I'm completely getting rid of, deleting these pixels. So if I make a mistake, oops, I've gone too far. I've done this. Now I could do undo, and I can go back over again, but what happens if I've done this multiple times? Well, even though I've got it in the history palette, all of these are completely gone. What I want to do is I want to be able to safely make a mistake and be able to undo my mistake. This is where layer masking comes in handy. So I'll back it all the way up till right here. In the bricks layer, if I go to layer, down to layer mask, to make a new one, I'm just going to choose the first one, reveal all. And you can see this is what has been created from here. This time, I'm going to work with my regular paintbrush tool. Works the same as my eraser tool. I can change the size of it and hardness up here. But anywhere that I paint black inside of this area, by the way, this is my foreground color, so this is the black that I'm choosing, will act like the eraser. So I can go ahead and I can mask in this area. You get a preview of what it looks like. Wherever there's black, it looks like I'm erasing it. However, if I make a mistake, if I get too close and oops, I'm going over the edge, oops, just going too quickly with this. Here's how I can undo it. If black conceals the image, I'm going to swap over to white. You can see how those two swapped out. Wherever I paint white will reveal the image. And so it gives me the ability to refine and undo whatever I've done. Swap back, and then I can go back into my masking mode and mask it out. That's the advantage that layer masking allows you to do. You can undo whatever you need, and it's the mask that I'm working on. Make sense? Kind of cool? Let me get even more complex for you. Let me show you the true value of layer masking. This is what we do in our graphic design classes that kind of takes it to another level. I've got a picture of a puppy. Oh, yeah, everybody does that. Let's place this puppy into this, go away, into this little background. It's just a red gradient background. I'll drag him in, and I'll size him up, and he'll look like this. What I need to do is I need to get rid of the white background. The complex thing about this is he's got a very, very fuzzy edge to him. And so it's going to be very difficult to go in and paint those little edges. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do it the quick and easy way. I'm going to grab my selection tool. Our lasso tool allows us to click and drag, and I can draw around my dog. And I'm not even going to do a good job. I'm just going to go quickly and do this. Works much like a pencil tool, except when I let go, it'll give me a marquee selection. I let go, now I've got my marching ant. So he is selected. Let's make our layer mask. Under Layer, Layer Mask, this time I've got a couple of more options. In this case, I want to reveal whatever I have selected. In this case, it's the dog. I want to reveal the selection, and it creates something that looks like this. Now check out my layer mask. What's been masked off? The rest of the white area, and you get a preview of it. It's kept my dog completely selected. But I need to clean up this edge even further. If I hold down Control, I'm going to click on my layer mask. And we're going to open up the Refine Mask feature. Control, clicking on that, gave me that. Here's the magic trick. With the refined mask, I can go in and tell the computer to look at the difference between the edges. The computer is very good at finding the edges. Notice that I got a little brush tool. I'm working in Layers View mode. Usually by default it'll put it on white. I just change it to layers so I can see my background. I'm going to click and drag around this, and you can see it's going to start painting a white edge. What I'm telling the computer to do is to look at this edge. Click and drag. Watch what happens when I let go of my mouse. Very quickly it cleaned up that edge. I told the computer to look for white pixels, or pixels that were contrasting to my subject. So very, very quickly I can clean up that edge. And it does a pretty good job. It's missing a few pieces. Especially up here with his little head and where it's white will give me some trouble. But in a couple of clicks, there it is. I've refined my mask. I can go in later, I can change the radius of it, give it a little bit more detail. I can make it smoother, or I can give it a feathered kind of edge. Maybe not. Once I'm done, when I say OK, my mask itself will be feathered out, and I can work with this. So if you're ever reading a magazine, or if you ever see something where somebody's taken multiple images and composited them together, this is how they do it. They take an image that they're working with, usually the model or the subject has a white or a solid color background. The reason for that is so that they can take out the edge around them and it'll look very, very neat and trim. They do that through refining their layer mask. And then from here I can move them around, put text around them, do whatever I need to from that. Cool? That's what refining edge does. That's just a nice little technique that you're working with. Any other questions or problems that you have with this particular project? Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to y'all and give y'all the rest of the class period to be able to finish this up.